evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of America in Black and White. Tonight, we have an esteemed guest that is going to show some proven experience and knowledge in not only community development, but flourishing and being an example for those of many of us would love to follow. Our guest tonight is Mr. Earl Fowlkes. Mr. Fowlkes served as president and CEO of the Center for Black Equity Incorporated, formerly the International Federation of Black Pride. He founded the IFBP in 1999 as a coalition of organizers in the United States, Canada, United Kingdom, and South Africa, formed to promote a multinational network of Black LGBTQ Pride and community-based organizations. There are over 50 plus Black Pride events with over 450,000 attendees each year. Prior to working at the Center for Black Equity, Earl previously served 15 years as the executive director of the DC Comprehensive AIDS Resources and Education Consortium, DC Care Consortium, that is, and Damien Ministries, organizations that provided services to persons living with HIV and AIDS in Washington, D.C. Earl has worked on health, political, and LGBTQ issues in many communities for over 30 years. Earl currently serves as a chair or member of 8 nonprofit board of directors and advisory boards. He served 4 years as chair of the Washington, D.C. Commission on Human Rights and is currently a member of the Washington, D.C. Police Complaint Board. Earl is very committed to a progressive political agenda and currently serves as the Democratic National Committee LGBT Caucus Chair and as an appointed member of the DNC Executive Committee. Earl has received over 6 honors and awards for his community service and was named one of 3 2013 Grand Marshals of the Heritage of Pride NYC Gay Pride, along with Harry Belafonte and Edith Windsor. A Philadelphia native, Earl has resided in Washington, D.C. for nearly 28 years. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Mr. Earl Fowlkes Jr. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you, Charles. I'm sorry you had to read all that. I've been around too long.
No, actually, that's all good. I mean, this is a lot of things that a lot of people just did not know that I'm glad that you wrote it because they should know who you are and the things that you have done.
Thank you.
Or is there anything else that you like to add to that illustrious career of yours?
No. Nothing's been said about that.
Well, I'd like to thank you for giving us your time.
My pleasure.
And as we start this, it's wonderful how, you have done some things to create the, help in creating, the Black Pride groups and organizations. What was your motivation behind that?
That's a good question. No one's ever asked me that question, I don't think. What happened was in the mid-90s, I was living in New York City, and I came to visit a friend of mine who lived in D.C. on Memorial Day weekend because he told me there was something called the Children's Hour, and they play a lot of house music. And not that I was a big fan of house music at the time, but I came to hang out in D.C. I never did that before Memorial Day weekend. And when I came down here, it was raining, as it traditionally rained the first 10 years of Black Pride in D.C. It was raining that weekend, and we went around Banneker Field, which is across from Howard University on Georgia Avenue. And we were walking. I said, well, first of all, I'm Black. I don't like being caught in the rain. I have an aversion. We don't want to get wet. So he said, come on. So we walked around this muddy field, this track, and there were like 800 to 1,000 people there. And I said, wait a minute. Why are all these people here? I've never been around this. I've been to New York Pride and I've been to Philadelphia Pride and some other prides. I never saw people walking around in a muddy field before. And I said, this is really remarkable. There are young people here. There are women here. There are men here. There's people in trans, represent the trans, non-binary communities. I said, if I ever live in D.C., I would want to be involved in this. That's what I said. I said, but I'm never moving to D.C. As it turned out, I accepted a job in D.C. a couple of years later, and I sought out the organizers of Black Pride. And the reason why I felt it was a sense of community. My experience being around people of color have been in the bar setting and the social setting. I never hung out with them outside of a bar, except for Pride in New York. And these were all people of color, and they were all proud, and and I've never saw that many people of color like that. And I wanted to be involved in it. And so that started my slow descent into Black Pride. And I moved here. I got involved in Pride 6 months after I moved here. 6 months later, I became president because I had nonprofit experience. I was running a nonprofit organization, and that started it. It was, and I still feel an emotion when I go around Black Pride and see communities of mixed together and interact together and socialize together and build the community. And I still get a thrill from that. And that was what started me 30 years ago. And it continues to this day.
Oh, wow. That's wonderful. I mean, because I can resonate with the Georgia Avenue situation or those prides, because when I lived in DC, I do remember, as you say, there were an enormous amount of people over there.
Right. Across from Howard University.
Yes, and it's gotten larger.
And the funny thing about that, the whole being in Banneker Field is, in DC, if you're going to be in a public park, you have to get a petition signed by everyone who lives around the perimeter of that space that you want to have an outdoor festival. And fortunately for us, there were only a few houses on the one side, on the back end on the other side of Georgia Avenue, behind whatever that street on the other side of Georgia Avenue. There were 3 houses, and we were able, I think we gave them $50 each to sign it. And there was a McDonald's run by someone who was homophobic, and he didn't sign the petition, but he certainly got a lot of business from us being there on that Memorial Day weekend. Normally, he would never get that many hundreds of people shopping, and eventually he signed the petition. I think a couple of years later, he was actually signed a petition, but we really didn't need that many people signing it. But he was persuaded because he brought in business, and it was quiet, and it was not, people weren't acting out, and they weren't, all the fears that he had towards having a bunch of Black LGBTQ queer people in this space. And actually, it's, if more businesses saw actually, I shouldn't say that. Businesses are now courting us because they see that we are consumers. We've always been consumers. And businesses now try to capture some of our money that we spend. And that's the other part of Black Pride is it's not just developing community, a sense of community, but it's also supporting businesses and elevating community organizations and businesses so that people know that we're out there, and that we have all kinds of printing companies and marketing companies and staging companies and everything you can think of, and restaurants. And Black Pride is one venue of allowing people to see that this is the broader community that what we have to offer.
So, just piggybacking off of that and going a step further, how has it been when it comes to from the time that you developed this in the 90s up to this point? In the particular communities, have you seen a lot of Black LGBTQ businesses popping up throughout the various communities since you guys started Pride?
Well, first of all, I want to clarify something, Charles. I didn't start DC Black Pride. Mm-hmm. Wilmore Cook, Ernest Hopkins, and Theodore Kirkland founded Black Pride. They were the signatures in Black Pride in 1991. I came in about 1995 and 96.
Okay.
But they had started Black Pride. But I've had my hands in helping other city communities start Black Pride around the country and around the world. So, it's interesting. I think as the world has changed a lot in the last 30 years, and our communities have changed a lot. And what's happening is that a lot of our younger people are coming out now without barriers. They don't perceive what I perceive as a barrier to starting a business 30 years ago. They don't see that. They just have a desire and a dream, and they're going to achieve it. And I think what's happened is that Black Pride has lifted up as we lift our communities up. We lift up every part of our community, which is the economic part of our community. We don't talk about it that much, but Black Pride is an economic engine for communities and businesses in those cities. And it's DC. The DC government knows that we bring in tens of thousands of people for Memorial Day weekend. They may not be going to official DC Black Pride events, right, but they're in DC and they're eating in restaurants and they're going shopping and they're going to clubs and they're buying things. And Atlanta, the government knows that. New York government knows that. Communities, they see that we come in and we're dropping tens of millions of dollars coming Black Pride. I think a number of years ago, if my memory serves me correctly, Black Pride brought in $15 million, like around 2005. That was the economic impact of Black Pride, and that's increased. You can't hardly get a hotel any place that weekend because our people are. If the host hotel is sold out, other hotels are sold out. People are flying in. People are taking the train in. People are driving in. It's an impact. Now, the question is, how much of that impacts our community, directly to our community? Because we don't own hotels, we don't own huge restaurants, and we don't own Macy's. That has to be researched a bit better than I can talk about it right now. I know that there is an impact, but we don't know the depth of the impact, and we need to do some research around that. And that's one of the next projects we're going to do is figure out what is the economic impact of Black Pride, and not only in places like DC, but in Little Rock, and Atlanta, yes, Jacksonville. Yes. It's not just about the big cities. It's Black Pride. We have 50 plus Black Prides, and they're in most of them are in the South. Every southern state is covered in Black Pride. So what's the economic impact in Nashville and Memphis? There is an impact, but we need to develop a tool, and we're working on that. We have one of the things I'm very proud of the Center for Black Equity is that we have a full-time evaluator on staff. And we evaluate everything we do. And then we're starting to evaluate the impact of Black Prides have on communities around the country and around the world. I went to UK Black Pride 2 years ago, and they had 65 to 70,000 people with their Black Pride.
Oh, wow.
It was humongous. I was very emotional because this was I believe their 15th Black Pride. I was at their first Black Pride and their second Black Pride. And so I've seen it grow from like 300 or 400 people to 50, 60, 70,000 people there. And it was just tense and 150 different organizations and vendors were out there. They had three stages, huge stages, like major concert stages. We have an impact and we need to start measuring it. And that's one of the things that the CB is going to be doing in the next few years.
So can you share some key milestones from your term as president of the Gertrude Stein Democratic Club?
I guess one of the milestones would be that I kept it around. The Gertrude Democratic Club, which is now called the Capitol Stonewall Democrats. Mm-hmm. I took it over when it was in the period of turmoil, when a group of younger members of the club felt that the leadership of the club was too entrenched and too traditional and too old. Mm-hmm. And they took over the Gertrude Stein Democratic Club. They didn't take it over in a bad way. They just got some people to join at the last moment, and they voted the old guard out and the new guard in. Unfortunately, the new guard didn't realize that they needed the old guard to build upon to make the club grow and become more relevant. The problem with the Gertrude Club, the problem with the Gertrude Club, I can't even say Gertrude Stein. The Stein Club. The problem with the Stein Club is that first of all, people don't know where the name came from. Younger people didn't care where the name came from. And DC is a very democratic club, a very democratic city. It has I think it's 85% Democratic. So the races that we had internally are different from races that other states and other cities have. Most city council people court the LGBT community for votes. The administrations are very friendly towards our community. And what I felt was important is that we were running more people for positions in city council and the neighborhood advisory councils and school board. And that's what happened during my tenure there. We kept the club. We were able to bring the old guard back and bring the new guard in. Not that I'm new, but I made certain that the people in my board were young, represented the cisgender community, the women's cisgender community, the trans community. We had a trans member, and we ran as a slate. And we were able to institute changes and make the club more open. And we do have a gay city council member from Ward 6. Yeah, that's these clubs. The Gertrude Stein Club has been around for years, and I was the second Black president of the Gertrude Stein Club, and I just felt that we needed to work together. We need the older people to have the collective history and knowledge of what things were like before, and to contribute money and resources. And we need younger people to go out there, and because they're the ones winning the elections, that we need to encourage and build up so they can go on and be the strongest they can be and have a full support of the community when they run for office. And that's what's happened. I did that for probably longer than I should have, but it was a stepping stone to understanding LGBTQ politics.
So can you tell us, is this how you transitioned into the position that you're doing now with the Democratic National Committee?
No. I actually became in the DNC first before I got involved in the Gertrude Stein. I was a member of the Gertrude Stein Club. And I was seen for the Gertrude Stein Club, I was seen as a neutral party, as a mediator. I was a bridge builder, to bring the club back without alienating the young people and not empowering too much the old guard, but realizing you need both parts of the community to do things positive, make positive change. How I got involved in the DNC was that in 2008, Obama was running against
Romney.
Well, he was running against in the Democratic primary. He was running against Hillary Clinton.
Yes.
I never knew Barack Obama. I never heard of him. I heard him speak in Philadelphia in 2007, and I happened to be in Philadelphia, and I heard him speak, and I said, "Oh, he's a very good speaker." I said, but no one's ever going to vote for a man with the name of Barack Obama. America is not going to accept that. Black folk or white folks are not going to accept a man named Barack Obama. Of course, I was wrong. And what happened is that I was invited to the Denver convention in 2008, and I was an observer as a visitor. And I saw him act presidential. I saw him speak at a large crowd at the Broncos football stadium, and he was very impressive. And I felt that he could win. Actually, the truth be told, I was actually a Hillary Clinton supporter because she asked me, her staff asked me, she actually called me and asked me to support her, and I did. That was before Barack Obama even declared. And so in 2009, Barack Obama was sworn in. And every June, the DNC LGBT Caucus has a gala to raise money. And the LGBTQ population is very small in this country, but it's moneyed in many quarters of moneyed, and they raise a lot of money for the Democratic Party because the Democratic Party is usually progressive on issues that impacting LGBTQ plus people. In 2009, there was a gala here in DC, the Mandarin Hotel. And the major LGBTQ organizations boycotted the event because they felt that Obama had broken his promises as far as lifting up LGBTQ issues. And I didn't feel that way. I felt that he inherited two wars. The oil industry was tanking. The housing industry was going under. There was, and he was only been in office for, at this point, less than 6 months. And I felt that these issues also impact LGBT folks, and that he needed to concentrate on getting us out of these wars and all these things he's done. And so I was told there was a boycott, and I was invited to go to the dinner. And I said, well, I don't have $500 or whatever it costs. And he said, no, you can come as a guest. And the Vice President Biden spoke. And I made the mistake of, when I met him, of talking about the Phillies, because I know he's from the Delaware Valley. And I said, how about the Phillies were good that year? I said, how about those Phillies? His hand on my shoulder, would not let me leave. And people, I'm looking at people behind him who are trying to get him to move on so he can leave. And then other people want their picture taken. And he's talking baseball with me. And I'm not going to push the vice president's hand off my shoulder. He wasn't hurting me, but he obviously wanted to talk about that. And after the evening was over, someone from the DNC, a friend of mine, Brian Bond, who works for the PFLAG organization, he said he was working at the DNC. He said, why don't you join it? Why don't you write a letter and ask the chair, who was Tim Kaine, Governor Tim Kaine at the time. He said, ask him to be a member of the DNC and to be an appointed member. And I said, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be involved in the party that way. It's a volunteer position. You're flying around to all these meetings at your own dime, and it's just a lot of hot air. And it's bad enough that I have to be lived in DC without having to be involved in the DNC. He persuaded me after he threatened to write a letter on my behalf. I decided to write the letter. I was accepted in 2009 as an at-large member of the DNC. I've been appointed 3 more times. I'm in my 4th term. And then in 2013, I became member of the LGBT Caucus. I became the chair of the LGBT Caucus. I didn't want to do that either. But I was persuaded to, if you say it supports, lifts the Black community up, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to say yes to it, even though my heart was not in it. But like anything else, you start doing it, and your heart becomes in it. But that's how I became in the DNC. And then, so I realized I didn't know anyone politically, the local folks in DC. So that's why I decided to become more active in the Gertrude Stein Club. And since when you go to DNC meetings, you sit with your delegation, each state territory has a delegation. And so I was sitting with the DC folks, and I didn't know anybody. And Anita Bonds, who's a city council person now, she was the chair of the party, and she had me sit next to her, and she explained, pointed out who each person was, and gave me a little thumbs-up bio about them. And I became involved in DC politics, and I've been appointed to the LGBT Caucus Chair for DC. I was the Human Rights Chair. I'm on the board of police campaign board. So yeah, one little thing causes an avalanche of all these other things that happen to you. And I guess someone said, you can always say no, but how many people of color, how many Black gay men are offered these opportunities?
Exactly.
And I had to take it.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I'm proud of you, and I'm so happy that you did, because I think, as you look at time, as time has come from that time to now, that it might not seem like a lot, but I'm sure that there has been plenty of impact and a lot of difference that you have made in all of this.
I can say with a degree of humility and pride mixed together that I have been able to witness and to encourage and support many LGBTQ people running for office, and particularly African Americans and people of color. That's not just African, but people, because that excludes Caribbean Americans and other people from the diaspora. I've seen a change, and I play a small part of that, but I take pride in the fact that every 4 years since I came on as chair of the LGBT Caucus, we've been able to increase LGBT delegates at the convention, and and it takes a lot of work behind the scenes. It's not something you brag about and have a press conference about. You work with state chairs, you work with state vice chairs, you work with communities, and I've been mediating issues in different states over the years because I'm a neutral party and I remain neutral. But I'm able to, because I have experience and I've been involved in local politics. I can bring some of that energy to issues, especially conflicts, and particularly in the South with Black politicians and the LGBT community, and helping to help the LGBT leadership to understand that these Black folks haven't been here forever. Mm-hmm. It's only the last generation that they've really become some power in the Democratic Party at the state level.
Yes,
and they feel that it's that you're a threat to them, and if I were here in their shoes, I feel the same way, and you would feel the same way. So what you have to do is to work together on issues that are important to the Black community, so that they can work together to support things in the LGBT community. And oftentimes people say, well, I invite Black people to the Black LGBT people to the table, and they never come to the table. I said, did you go to their event and bring, and you have to go to their event. You invite them to, and when they come to your event, do you meet them at the door and introduce them to everyone like you would do if you're home? You have to treat them the same way you treat guests in your home. Hopefully you treat guests in your home. You invite someone to your house. You make sure that they have the refreshments and libations, and they're comfortable, and you introduce them to the people in the house, and then they're willing to come to do things for you. But you have to make the effort. And I think sometimes the party forgets that Black folks will vote Democratic for the most part. But every election, you have to renew the covenant. You have to go and ask. You can't assume. Hillary Clinton assumed that Black people are going to vote for her because they voted for her husband and voted for other candidates running for office. But you have to go and ask Black people to renew. I call it renewing the covenant. You have to say, I need your vote. And you have to go and ask for the vote. And that doesn't mean sitting in the church for one Sunday out of the election during the election season and sitting in the front row and sitting in the pulpit and trying to learn how to clap. It means you have to.
Oh God, that is so true.
At least get a Black staffer to get you have some practice run. But it means that you have to not just show up at a church or show up at the barbershop or the hairdresser, hair salon. You have to show up on our issues, especially economic issues, the educational issues, and the things that are important to us as a community. And that's where Black folks and Black queer folks have so much in common if we work together for common goals. Because if you're doing something around Black economics, that impacts me. I'm Black. Right. I had to remind the DNC years ago that I was always invited to the LGBTQ events, and I said, I can also go to the Black events. You can invite me to the Black events. I am Black. And I said, oh well, we didn't think. I said, why would I not want to go to a Black event? When I punch my LGBT card, I don't mean that I can't punch my Black card. Right. Time stamp it. It's like I'm a Black gay man. I was born Black. I'm going to die Black.
Right. That's so interesting. As you say that, because that's almost like when you hear people say they're not only just taking the Black community for granted, but they're taking the Black LGBTQ community for granted because there's this automatic assumption that I've got your vote. It's in the bag. Right. And that's not true. So, have you recommended some other things other than from the etiquette perspective that they do in order to get better?
When Hillary Clinton was running, and I personally like Hillary Clinton. I think that she would have made a good president. I went to their Brooklyn. One of the things I travel representing the LGBT community, but when I'm in spaces around the country, people know who I am, or they check with their local politicians and they check with the DNC, and they say, well, he's on the DNC. And so they'll bring their complaints to me, issues that they're seeing in the community. And I said, well, I'm the chair of I'm the chair of the LGBT caucus. They say, yeah, but you're Black. So this is like, okay, you're right. So I was carrying a bucket load of complaints to the DNC, to the Hillary Clinton campaign office in Brooklyn Heights, New York. And I kept hitting this resistance, but we get the numbers that our matrix shows that we're going to get this amount of vote. I said, but people on the ground are telling me that there's been no outreach in Detroit, there's been no outreach in Philadelphia, or not enough outreach in Philadelphia, not enough outreach in Milwaukee, not outreach in Atlanta, and people. I've been in these places, and Black folks are telling me, not Black gay folks, but Black folks are telling me this, and they kept standing on the metrics. And then about 3 weeks to 4 weeks before the election, I get a call. We need help getting reach out to the Black media. I said, what are you going to do with the Black media? Well, we have the print media. The print media said, you don't understand how the print media works. There's the Black newspapers. There are Black newspapers in different communities. People pick up those magazines, their newspapers at the barbershop, in the supermarket. One issue may take 6-7 weeks before everyone reads it.
Right.
It's not like the Washington Post, when the newspapers, journalism has changed. It's not like the Washington Post comes out every day and the Philadelphia Inquirer comes out every day. These papers come out once a week, sometimes once a month, bi-weekly, and it'll take you 6 months to get all of them, to identify all of them and put an ad in and get it'll be too late. Black media, the radio station, not everyone listens to, Soul 100 or whatever, in the morning when they're commuting. This has to be a strategy you work on 6 months to a year in advance. And it was too late. And when we saw what happened, she should not have lost. And we're still paying the price for her losing that election in 4 years of the Trump administration. What has to happen is that we need to bring in leadership and that understands the Black community. And it's sometimes they're Black folks, not all the time. Right. Sometimes Black folks. We need to develop an agenda. We don't come into the political space oftentimes with an agenda. We don't have a list of things we want. We need to have economic agenda. We need to have a educational agenda. We need to have an agenda of things that we can measure our elected official by. Healthcare, affordable healthcare. We need to have a report card, and we need to hold our elected officials, Democratic or Republican or independent. We need to hold them accountable, and we haven't been doing that. So the elected officials get off easy, and they can bypass us and go to church and go to a church and think that they're doing something for us. I don't care if they go. Matter of fact, I don't want to go to a church where elected officials come and sit up there anyway and speaking. I don't come to hear them speaking. And
but that's been 30 to 40 years coming, though. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, you're right. I'm just saying that's been like 30 to 40 years coming.
I hope it's not too late. And first of all, not everyone goes to church anymore. And then what about Black Muslims and Black Buddhists and Black Taoism and there's all kinds of Black Afrocentric religions. People aren't going and sitting at those big steeple churches, but people aren't going to church anymore. Our young people aren't going to church.
Right. So tell me something. In your experience, how has the landscape for the LGBTQ plus individuals evolved over your career?
Well, it's been a bumpy road. It's been a bumpy road. Things were I'm of a certain age. When I first came out, people were starting to accept LGBTQ people. It was the Black folks were not always open to it, but the society was understanding and seeing us in the entertainment and the arts, and they were starting to slowly but surely begrudgingly accept queer folks. Then AIDS came around, and then it became being gay was a curse. That's why we get AIDS, because of our sinful nature, as it were. And then things started to get better again in 2000s. People were begrudgingly accepting LGBTQ people. The problem with not the problem, but what's happening now, which is a good thing, is that our community members are actually running for office. It's one thing to support someone who's going to support you. It's another thing to have someone who looks like you being in there representing you. And not only you can represent queer folks, you can be if a gay elected officials. I'm not supporting just gay community. I'm supporting everybody. And I think that we're becoming more politically stronger. We're running races all over the country. We're winning races all over the country. And I think that that's probably been the greatest change. The people, and they're younger people, they're stepping up into places, and they're not saying no. They're not accepting that anymore. That's one of the great things about the youth movement, is that they don't accept no. People in my generation accepted no, and oftentimes just accepted it and moved on. But people who are younger, this newer generation, they're not accepting no. They're willing to work for it. They are being elected all over the country. And now we still represent maybe 2 or 3% of the elected officials in the country.
Right.
But the fact that there are people standing up, and they're oftentimes Black queer people, and we're winning it. It's very. I'm so glad to see this. It's wonderful to see people get appointed to the administration. Barack Obama did a good job appointing Black queer people and queer people, LGBT people in general, to political appointee positions. The Biden administration has done the same thing. I like to see a Black gay ambassador one day, but and I'm sure that's going to happen. But we're making a change, and this allows younger people to see that you can be different and be part of the society, to be part of the political process. You can be transgender, and Andrea Jenkins, who's in the city council president in Minneapolis, who's a Black trans woman. I've seen her run for office. I met her when she was working for a city council person. And then she decides to run for office. I take such pride in seeing these people make a difference and create their own agenda and represent us so well. I don't know if I'm asking your questions, but you can't win on just gay votes. You have to convince the community to support you. And our community is, we say how homophobic we are, and we're this and that and the other thing, but we still many people are getting elected who are LGBTQ, especially the T. Black trans men and women are running and winning. And then the Black trans vote is what, 2-3%, 5%?
Yeah, exactly.
So that means that they're talking the language for the voters that they understand, and they're presenting themselves and presenting solutions to the issues of our community. It's about and people, as one person once told me, he said, we straight people have been messing up for years. We might as well let the gay folks come and see what they can do. Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing with women voters, and women elected officials. I can remember a time where very few women were elected to high position. Mm-hmm. And one day we're going to elect a woman, a female president, cisgender, a female president. I would like to be Michelle Obama, but she's not going to do it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that would, that would be the best thing in the world, and that would be hands down a win for her.
But she doesn't like politics. She hates politics. She hates it.
Yeah. I don't blame her.
I don't blame her either.
So, let me ask you this, because this is such a wonderful conversation at this point. There's so many questions. There's like a whole bunch of them just running through my mind. But let me ask you this. like the issue that's kind of like still there, but it's slowly dissipating. That is within the Black community itself and its support for the LGBTQ people. What do you suggest that we do to make this a little bit easier and better at the same time?
That's a very thought-provoking question. When I worked at Damien Ministries, I came from New York area to work at Damien Ministries. It was a faith-based HIV/AIDS organization, and one of our charges was to go to other church faith-based institutions, mostly the Black church, and to get them to develop AIDS ministries in their church to deal with the high number of HIV/AIDS that the members had contracted. And DC was a hot spot for AIDS for many years. And so I came, and so my father's a minister, was a minister, he's retired. And so I grew up in the church. And one of the things that I realized is that the minister does not often dictate the direction of the church. It's oftentimes the mother of the church, or a group of seniors who have been around for hundreds of years, and they hired the pastor. And if they say the pastor is wearing a bad tie, and he's not going to wear that tie again. So, and they're oftentimes the gatekeepers. They are the gatekeepers of the church,
right?
And they're early and they're late. And so I started reaching out to the gatekeepers of the church, and I started talking to them about having a health ministry, not an AIDS ministry, because AIDS was associated with a lifestyle, the LGBTQ lifestyle. Mm-hmm. And I was very successful, and I would come into a church and I would be able to, in a few moments, determine what type of church it was. If there was the women's hems were below the knee, they didn't have any makeup on, or did have makeup on, or lipstick on, or I could look where they placed me. If they put me in I would never sit in the pulpit because I'm not a pastor, but I'm usually sitting in the front row, and I would make my remarks not about AIDS, but about compassion, about compassion for people who are suffering in your congregation. If they had cancer, you would treat them differently. Compassion is where you have to have compassion without judgment. And I think I was successful, and we had a very robust, and actually worked with the Black Muslims. Mm-hmm. We actually had a joint event with the Christian churches and the Black Muslim event, and it was very, very successful. And they all knew I was gay. I didn't realize they knew I was gay. We would have monthly meetings, and one month it was in April, and I said, well, I can't meet with you. Can we change the May meeting because I have a conflict? And one of the older women said, oh yes, right. You have that gay pride. Don't you, the Black pride thing? Oh my God! I never said it. But she knew it. And I assume they all knew. And what I'm basically saying is that we have to deal with the church without judgment. We know the faults of the church. We know the positives. We all know that. But criticizing church leadership is not going to necessarily get you what you want, get the support you need. Finding common ground, especially these days in a place like DC, we have a lot of violence. We have a lot of gun violence. We have a lot of hungry people. We have a lot of homeless people. No one's asking if they're LGBTQ, but they're Black folks, many of them. And finding common ground to work with people on issues that are impacting community is in one way. It takes a lot of work. It's time consuming, but the result is going to be that you will normally have a relationship with a person, and you may count on that person to speak up for you at a meeting where you're not at. Mm-hmm. Um, it, it's important that we build relationships, and we need to, without judgment. Um, and I've seen it happen, but we have to be consistent, and we have to be. We also have to hold them accountable for not just how they treat LGBTQ folks, how they treat people who are substance users, or homeless people, and people who are coming under out of the correction system. Um, there's a lot of common ground that we can work on, and violence towards transgender women that has to stop.
Mm-hmm.
But also, we have to talk about violence towards everybody.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So instead of focusing on just transgender women, we need to focus on everybody and inclusive of transgender women.
Right.
And it takes time, but the rewards are beneficial to the entire community.
So, can you highlight significant achievements in your advocacy work for the LGBTQ plus community?
Well, when I came to DC, I have a special place in my heart for the transgender community, because I had an uncle who was gender nonconforming, a great uncle who was gender nonconforming, and we were not allowed to make fun of him, Uncle Tim. We were not allowed to be disrespectful to him or anyone else, and I thought I knew that Uncle Tim was different, but it didn't make a difference. He was my uncle. He was, I didn't care. I loved him. And so when I came to DC, Damien Ministers, we would have spiritual retreats at a retreat center, a Catholic retreat center in Southern and Ward in St. Charles County. And we never had any transgender women in our retreat. And I said, why? I said, well, it's a Catholic retreat center, and so we had housing. So I made certain that transgender men and women were welcome in our housing. They went on retreats. When I came on the DC Black Pride, I made certain that we had transgender women on our board. I was on the first founding board of the first transgender organization in transgender health empowerment in DC. I think that my openness to the transgender community, I think it's unfair to expect the transgender community or any community to undo the heavy burden that's been placed on them by society. John Kennedy said, undo the heavy burden and let the oppressed go free. We need to make certain that we help communities, the marginalized parts of our community, to undo the heavy burden. And you do it by including people. You do that by including people. So I think that if anything, I help in DC and in the nation to look upon transgender individuals as part of our community. I brought in the first transgender leadership in the DNC LGBT Caucus. It was never done before. I ran on a slate. I had my vice chair. My vice chair was a transgender woman from Oregon. They're out there. You just have to be inclusive, and she was excellent. So I think that speaking up for transgender men and cisgender men and women was something I'm very proud of, and I think that I made some. I like to believe. You never know. I like to believe that I've impacted the community in a positive way, and by matter of fact, one of the things I'm very proud of is on the DNC. There's not enough transgender members of the DNC. There's 465 members of the DNC, and there are only a couple transgendered individuals. So what I did as chair of the LGBT caucus is I formed an ad hoc committee, which is a chair. Robert's Rules of Parliamentary Procedure allows me to form ad hoc committees, and I formed the ad hoc committee of for the transgender community. And you don't have to be a member of the DNC to be part of it. So it encompasses transgender activists around the country, and it's very busy. It's very active, and we're hoping to memorialize it the ad hoc committee in our bylaws, so the LGBT caucus bylaws. So there's always a caucus, ad hoc committee for transgender individuals, so that they can be represented at the table, and feel part of the process, and have their issues identified and solutions developed for them.
Wow. So tell me, how do you see the intersectionality of race and the LGBTQ plus issues in your work?
Oh, well, every day I wake up. I'm a Black gay man. That you can't, that's my intersectionality. I think that sometimes society expects us to be able to, like the DNC, they only invite me to LGBT stuff, not the Black stuff. I can be invited to the Black History event, since I probably know more about than most of you all do. It means accepting the totality of who you are, and it's, you could be Black and gay and Muslim, or Black and gay and left-handed and Black and gay and disabled and Black and gay. There's so many different things that are part of our lives where people try to break it down so they can understand who we are, but each individual are complex people. There's some people who are artists. There's some people who have different skills and different gifts, and that's all part of who we are. And I operate out of the fact that I'm a multi-layered person, and I have my proclivities. I like I have the British royal family. Don't ask me where I got it from, but I've actually seen the Queen Elizabeth, may she rest in peace, in person several times. I don't have to explain that. That's who I am. That's and the intersectionality means that if you see me, get to know me, you get to know all parts of me. You accept all of me. You can't choose the things you like, the things that make it easy for you to deal with me. The fact that we are all multi-layered, multifaceted people, and we need to embrace that and embrace the differences, that we can be different and still contribute to society, and still can contribute to our community. And that's how I say intersectionality. It's like, if you're homeless, what difference does it make if you're gay or not? You're homeless. That's the most important part. And we need to start trying to box people in. I think society tries to box us in so they make it easier for them to understand us and accept us.
Well, just to add a little bit more to that, let me just ask you this: is because it's been the American tradition to group people as one. So that means that people like yourself and me, let's say you're Black, but you're gay, which means you've got two strikes. And so that's when you want to choose which side you like. So do I like the Black man side? Do I like the gay Black man side? So how does that play the part in what's still to be, I think, some serious repression? Because not everybody is getting not only the rights to be seen, but the judgments that are being passed are still kind of like strikes, like the Scarlet Letter. How do we get rid of that?
That's going to take some time. I see the point you're making. It's going to take some time. It's going to take. There's our emblem of our motto of our country is "E plurimus unum," out of many there are one. And that's how I believe. I have a lot of relationships with a lot of. One of the things about being the chair of the LGBT caucus for the DNC, you're automatically outed every place you go, because every place you're introduced that way, and they look, oh, okay, he's the chair. Okay, and that's something. But especially for Black men, for women, it's not as much of an issue. But for Black men, sometimes they're uncomfortable with it. But that's their issue. I'm comfortable. I'm comfortable who I am, and I'm willing to accept you for who you are on when I meet you, and we find common ground. You like, I like sports. I like, there's certain teams I don't like, and we can joke about that. And after a few 15, 20 minutes, they're at ease with me. My job is not to make you at ease with me. I accept people on face value until I get to know them better. I think that as Black men, we carry such a heavy burden. And I think that sometimes, even in the progressive party like the Democratic Party, we marginalize men, not intentionally, but we marginalize men. We lift up Black women. We lift up different ethnic groups. We lift up, all kinds of people. We don't ever lift up Black men. And I may be a gay man, but I'm also a male. I'm a cisgender male, 100%. Not going to change. That's not going to change. And I do see that oftentimes Black men are pitted against one another. We've always been marginalized ever since slavery. And I think it's time that Black men, we have to claim our spaces, that we have our issues. We need to press our agenda, and the agenda has to be inclusive of all Black men, but we need to start speaking our issues out and coalescing together. That's one of the things I would like to see. I've had to actually have this conversation within the DNC. It's like we have a Black women's, we have a Black caucus, we have an LGBT caucus, we have a women's caucus. Why can't we have a men's caucus? Why can't we have a men? And then the whole thing is that, well, men rule the world. Black men don't rule the world. And I think it's time we need to look broader and look at ways. I like to see, I don't think it's going to happen, but I would like to see a Black caucus, a Black men's caucus, or a men's caucus, because we also need to help our white and Latino cohorts understand that we have a lot in common. We keep lifting up we lift up women, but we never lift up men. Why don't we lift up Black men? Black men are going to make the difference in whether Biden wins or not this election. It's going to be Black men. Our ability to get Black men to come out and vote, and we've not done a good job on that. And we need to have strategies on dealing with Black men. White men it's 50-50, voting. Most of them vote Republican. We know that. Black women vote Democratic. What about Black men? Each year we get lower and lower turnouts, and because we don't seek their vote, we don't seek their vote. It's a very difficult. We have rates of incarceration, our job. It's just we have so many issues in our community because we have treated Black men so poorly. Now we expect them to pull themselves up by the bootstrap, which is the American way. It's like you fall down, you get to pick yourself up. No, you fall down, your neighbors help you up, and they help you get you back on your feet. We don't have that mentality in our community, and we need to start helping each other and picking each other up.
I agree with you 500% on that. And as I always say, through this restructure from like maybe 2-3 years ago, when they talk about the hierarchy, now it's the white women. Or is it the Black women, the white women, the white man, and the Black man is still on the bottom? So if the Black man is still on the bottom, that means that the foot is still on his neck and he's still struggling to make waves and make moves. So like a lot of us are sitting here and we're trying to make things be what it's supposed to be. And if the Democratic Party is really looking at getting the support of Black men, especially the Black LGBTQ men, just like you were saying about that man's caucus, that Black man's caucus, why is it that they're not making that actual reach out to come out and to show that vulnerability from their side to make these ends meet? Because if we're doing all the work, then that means we're still not getting anywhere.
You know, it's a very complicated situation. I think that one of the problems that this administration has, and I think it's important, people will say you can't criticize them. And yes, I can. Because I'm a member of the DNC doesn't mean that I've given up my voice and my opinions. I think that if we look at this current administration, we need to evaluate how we spend money and what issues are important for us. We're giving $16 billion to Israel. We're giving billions of dollars to the Ukraine. We're giving billions of dollars to Taiwan. We can't, we have our borders are porous, and we talk about the southern border. People come across the northern border as well. Mm-hmm. The southern border, the tens of thousands of people just walking across. We need to take care of our own. I was taught that you take care of your own house first before you paint your own house first before you go paint someone else's. And it was really about mowing. I always wanted to get paid to mow lawns. I would go mow everyone's lawn and get paid in the neighborhood. And then I had to mow my own. And I had to mow. And my father told me, you have to mow our lawn first. And then you go to mow the other people's lawns. We need to, as men, we need to set an agenda. An agenda will be educational opportunities, debt, student loan elimination, vocational training, training while in the penal system, housing, child support for the men who are raising their kids. Now, so many men are raising their own children. We need to demand these things, and we need to shift it. There has to be a shift in how we spend the money. If we can spend tens of billions of dollars for helping everyone in the world, and I can look out my window and see people sleeping in the park across the street, and it's going to be a black man, more likely than not, that we need to hold our government and our party accountable. And that means that we have to sit and talk these issues and have some real issues. But we can't complain unless you have a plan. What's our agenda? What are the things that we want to see different in the next administration? And whether it's Republican or Democratic, these are a list, and we need to be able to. And it can't be Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson.
I agree with that.
but we have, until we come together and make an effort to list the issues that we want the administration to. That's what other communities do. They go to the administration and they tell them what they want, and we haven't done that. We don't do that. We're so glad that we can go to the White House 3 or 4 times a year that we're happy. But the reality is that we need to come up with an agenda, and the agenda is very simple. It's many of the things I already named, but we need to, I went to Ghana last year, and Ghana, the Ghana economy does not grow fast enough to provide enough job for young people. And there are tens of thousands of, you just drive through the countryside and you see young people sitting at these junctions, where these roads come together, and there's just junctions. You see young people just sitting there, neatly dressed, but they don't have jobs, and they're hustling. They're selling things, everything, pencils and everything. But there's no crime. There's no carjackings. Mm-hmm. We have the same issue here in this country with young people not getting education and not having opportunities, but they're carjackings and they're shootings and they're gangs, and certainly Ghana's situation is you can't compare it. But the fact is that I did not feel unsafe in Ghana, and I certainly feel unsafe in many parts of the United States. We can resolve those things by getting vocation. Not everyone's going to go to college. Not everyone's going to HBCU. We need plumbers. I can tell you something. If a transgender woman showed up at my place and she was able to fix my electricity and plumbing, no one's going to say boo.
Right.
And the same thing in any other heterosexual household. If a trans woman comes and she's able to fix their plumbing and charge you like a good price, You're not gonna say you can't come and fix this in my house because you're transgender. You're gonna accept it. This is the way to build community. Is we need people to lay bricks. We need all kinds of air conditioning, heating specialists, auto specialists, repairing cars. There's so many things that they used to do. Tailors, we need tailors. Why do we not have any cleaners? We can't clean clothes.
Right.
Why can't we have grocery stores in our community? We can't run a bakery. Other communities do it because they stick together and they take care of this stuff. They don't depend on the government to do everything. We're dependent on the government to do anything. We do need some help. We need a hand lifting up. We do need a hand to help us lift up, but we don't need to be told what to do or to be dependent on the government. And right now we have too dependent on the government taking care of us, and they're not doing a good job. That
is true. So let me just ask you this, one final question here in closing. Sure. Can you discuss any challenges you faced and overcame in your career journey?
Oh, I think my greatest challenge is my own. I think we place barriers into ourselves. I was told that many times that some of the projects I was working on was not succeed. Like the Center for Black Equity, I was told it would never work. You can't organize our community. I think the biggest challenge was listening to people and disregarding people who were saying negative things, who talk about building community but don't know how to do it, and therefore they disparage anyone who tries to do it. And I think that, and then people see you're successful, then they want to take what you've done and take it away from you. And I think that when you do community organizing and you're successful at it, I think I've been relatively successful at it. I had to push away people who wanted to share the success but not do the work.
Now that's numero uno. And I agree with that a whole 5,000%.
So being successful in our community does not mean that you are going to be respected always. We get very petty. We get very jealous. Well, how come he's doing that? And he shouldn't be doing that. We pull each other down, and not being pulled down has been one of the most difficult challenges because it's depressing sometimes. You expect community, you expect support from the community, and you get criticism like, "Why are you criticizing me? I'm doing what you want. You want a successful pride. Your pride successful. Well, I don't like so and so wasn't singing. You didn't have the right drag queen. We pull each other down. I guess I'm saying is that not allow myself to be pulled down and not participating in pulling down other people. That's the biggest challenges that I've had, and I think I've overcome that. But it's something you have to do every day, and it's exhausting. It's exhausting because you're fighting the greater community. You're fighting the white power structure, and then you have to deal with people snipping at your heel in your own community.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to thank our esteemed guest, Mr. Earl Fowlkes. He definitely dropped a lot of nuggets for everybody to get some. I suggest that for those that are actually into community organizing, such as what this show is doing, let's get together and let's make this thing about one.
Yes.
Mr. Fowlkes, I appreciate you. I will definitely be in contact with you, and I hope you come back to the show again because this is definitely some things that our people need to listen to. That is from either being Black or just being part of the LGBTQ community, because we've all got some growing to do and we all need to do it together. And I want to thank you for being here tonight.
It's been my pleasure, and I will come back anytime I'm invited.
Yes, sir. Well, everybody, You all have a great evening, and thank you again. And we'll see you all tomorrow. Have a good